I had the pleasure of meeting my next guest at the Teddings Fixed Ops Roundtable that was recently held out in New York City. Curtis Gardner was a person that I was able to just kind of happen to sit by at this conference and really struck up a really good conversation with him. And just an absolute pleasure to have you on, Curtis. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely, Jake. It was great meeting you at the roundtable event, as well as being on your WrenchWay podcast here.
Yeah, how did New York City treat you?
Well, it was very busy for me. I was in and out the same day, and that was a little hectic. Didn't know it took so long to Uber 10 miles, about an hour and a half. It was just pretty crazy, but I made it, so it was worth it. Got to meet you and meet a ton of other people that I've, seen on social media and LinkedIn and stuff. So that was really awesome.
Yeah, it really was. And you brought the technician component to the conversation, which I think a lot of times is missing. And I thought that was really neat. So let's kind of kick things off here with learning about you. What is your current position?
I'm currently an Audi Master Guild Technician for Audi. That's basically the highest certification level you can earn as an Audi tech. Just achieved that this year, the beginning of the year. But I've been working at Audi for just under 9 years. Next month will be 9 years.
Congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment, something to be celebrated. Uh, were you always going to be a technician, or what led you down this path?
Well, I got out of high school and tried a semester of community college and just kind of figured I'd give it a shot. Didn't really have any plans or anything. Kind of wanted to try engineering. But I did that for a semester and it was quickly realized it wasn't really for me. More of a hands-on guy. So my first job was then changing oil at a quick car. And one of the mainline techs there went to UTI. And so he recommended going to UTI as well, Universal Technical Institute. So went there and just been sailing the path ever since.
Yeah, was it something you had thought about like in middle school or high school or anything, or was it just happened to be that that was your first job that set you down this path? I'm always interested in the origin story of what that maybe one or two things were that led this to be a viable option for you.
I think I've always enjoyed like putting things together, taking things apart. I was big with Legos. That was probably one of my favorite toys and stuff when I was a kid. Um, So the building stuff was always fun, and then cars, I think naturally just whether it was video games or oh, that's a cool car driving by or whatever the case is. And so just I think not knowing what I was going to do after high school and then just kind of falling into an oil change position, it just kind of met and I was able to put two and two together and now I love, taking things apart and putting them back together on just so much of a larger scale.
Yeah, at a larger, more complicated scale, right? Like these cars aren't getting any easier to work on.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty crazy because every year they're updating the technologies, they're updating the cars, and every year we need to learn them and adjust to them and adapt to them. So I think it's extremely challenging, having to learn
Yeah.
something new every year.
How about when you first got into a shop? Was that part intimidating or challenging? Like, was it something I know you like to take things apart and put them back together, but when you're first starting and maybe you throw the element of oh my, they're actually billing out my time now. Like it can be a little bit of an intimidating process.
I think for me, I didn't really think of it that way at first. So before I worked at Audi, I actually spent 6 years at Toyota. That was my first position. I got that position through UTI. They help link you up with a dealership in the area. And so did Toyota at first, and it kind of just felt a little unreal. Like I was like, oh, I'm working at a dealership. This is crazy. I didn't ever think that I would be here. And I was just changing oil. I didn't really the hours build factor didn't really honestly until I got to Audi. It didn't really feel as real And I think that's because I was able to understand the business a little bit more and the things behind being a technician and stuff like that. So it took me quite a while to realize and capitalize on like a technician and what goes in behind closed doors, not just fixing a car, but the amount of time, the amount of work, and like you said, the basically what goes on behind closed doors of being a technician. It's not just putting things back together.
Yeah, and I think at some level that's kind of natural, or even better from the standpoint of not putting all that pressure on yourself to start off with. I think a lot of young techs can fall in that trap of, looking at whether it's flat rate or just if there's visibility to their production output. It can put a lot of pressure on a young technician. And I think by putting even more pressure on themselves really might start to get you losing confidence, might make you question why you got into this field in the first place, right? Like if you're counting your hours right off the bat, sure you want to be productive, sure you want to do a really really good job, but that first job that comes around where a bolt breaks and you're kind of in the middle of a really tough job, and in your head that internal clock is like continually going while you're not actually putting anything out. It can be a lot of pressure on a young technician, can it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the things that maybe needs to be realized a little bit more in the technician space is, the young guys, they see some of the older guys making a lot of hours or making a lot of money, and the first thing they want to do is be that. They want to make a lot of hours and they want to be in that position and flag a lot of hours. And I think it's very easy to get caught up on, comebacks or mistakes or rushing. And so it's very important in that first few years as a technician that you focus on building up the base of your skills and really focus more on your process versus just flagging a bunch of hours and learn as much as you can the first few years, because once you're on your own and you're full flag, and that time that you spend fixing a comeback is time that you could be using to work on somebody else's car and make some more hours for yourself.
Well, and this is where the point of conversation for today is so important, because there is so much attrition with early days technicians that are just getting started off. And we're going to spend a fair amount of time today talking about how young techs can build a career that lasts, and really doing so in a way that's not just kind of, I don't know, trying to blast your way through the corporate ladder. Or, I think a lot of us are, especially at an early age, very ambitious, really wanting to kind of work to that next thing. When in reality, there are a lot of steps to take, and that's not meant to be a negative, right? Like, I think in a lot of ways, the more early on in your career that you can kind of harness yourself and hold yourself back from maybe all of the big fancy jobs and everything that you really really aspire to do, to understand, like, hey, if I take my time right now, I can probably learn this a little bit better, and so the next time I do it, I'm a little bit more confident. And it really, I think at some level helps you build a solid foundation for that. So let's talk about that a little bit. In the early days of a technician's career, and now that you've worked in this industry for quite some time, how do we keep technicians, especially in those early days, developing at a rate that is acceptable while also maintaining their confidence, and just kind of building that really really good young technician? Do you have any advice for the general population on how we go about this, and maybe where we're going wrong right now?
I try to think of it like a pyramid. Think of your skill set as a pyramid and think of flagging a ton of hours at the very top. You need to have everything and the building blocks down below so that your pyramid doesn't tip over. So you need to work on things like your quality checks. You need to work on things like making mistakes and owning those mistakes, because everybody makes those mistakes. It's how you put in the self-reflection and you build off of those mistakes. I think those are some of the most important things. You need to have the ability to go through a process of doing a multi-point inspection and things like that. Those are some of the more important, I would say, like baseline things is being able to look over a car efficiently, being able to quality check your work and not spend too much time focusing on, I want to flag a bunch of hours, because if you have the hard work and you have the discipline, you will get there eventually. I think people, especially in my shop, will see me, for example, and I'm like, well, I've been doing this for 15 years. That's a long time, and it says sense kind of strange saying that still, but you'll get there. If you have it and you want to be a technician, you'll get to the top. You just need to give it time, and you need to focus on some of these other things, like the best way to take this component apart without breaking something. Learning from a mentor or a master tech in the shop is one of the best ways that you can do that, because they're going to tell you and lead you the best way versus saying just flag a bunch of hours, because that's throwing you in the deep end, and that can lead to people making so many mistakes where that dealership, then that shop or dealership, ends up being like, hey, we need to move on from you because you've made too many mistakes, or maybe you're not living up to the standards that they or you set for yourself. And so it's very important to just kind of play it safe and slowly build every year. And the first 5 years, I believe, is some of the most important of a technician's career.
Oh, could not agree more. Let's spend some time on those kind of foundational building blocks. What are some things as a, say, maybe not day one tech, but maybe you're 3 months in, you're 6 months in. What are things that you've seen with young technicians that succeed, that they do well from the start?
Uh, Probably asking questions. It sounds simple, and it's not necessarily like a technical or mechanical skill, because those will come naturally over time. I think it's more focused on some of the softer skills that we use as technicians. Um, so basically, some of the things that you can do in those first few months, besides asking questions, is it's going to be trial and error. It's going to be one of those things. Is not every process that's supplied to you is going to work for you. You got to figure out what works best, what feels natural, where you can still get the job done, and that you can still follow the rules of the dealership, still make a paycheck, and still make the customer happy.
Well, I think the question piece is one where I think we as an industry could do a better job at, even I shouldn't even say industry doing a better job, just in general, kind of outlining that a little bit more, because I remember being a young entry level technician, and maybe you have a day where you're asking, in your own head, you're feeling like, I'm asking too many questions today. Like, why am I asking too many questions? And then ultimately, if you feel like that, then you just try to either figure it out, and you're trying to go from like not knowing what it is to looking at, looking at something wherever you're going to get your specs from, or wherever you're going to get your service data from. uh, and I think at times that can be really helpful, because that's going to help point you in the right direction of where you need to go in the future. But I have seen maybe a little bit of a shift from when I was growing up in the industry to the amount of young techs that are using YouTube and even like Chat GPT to try and figure things out. Do you think that's a good way to go, or does that kind of veer off? Hey, when you're going that direction, you're veering off what our shop's process is here.
Yeah, I think if you can, I've heard a lot of people using YouTube, and there's a lot of options out there on ways to repair things and ways to fix things. And some shops are kind of stingy on helping young technicians. Not every
Yeah.
shop has that mentor or technician that's willing to help. And so it can be kind of tough either way for young guys in the space. And I think also expectation, the pressure that a shop or a foreman or a manager can put on a young technician can be overwhelming sometimes. And so patience from a management standpoint is just as important, and realizing that you need to pair those young guys with somebody that can help them set themselves up for success and not rush them into it. Is having that leadership within the shop is just as important for those young guys as it is for the older guys.
Well, and I think a lot of us forget those early days of coming on as a technician, right? You mentioned that you've been doing it for 15 years now. it doesn't feel like that long when you're in it, that 15 years kind of quickly goes by. But when you put yourself back in that beginner's mindset, or that technician that's just starting out, and remember when you got into it, were there times where maybe you felt that either the pressures, or maybe the, hey, I'm being annoying when I'm asking these questions? Like, do you recall any of that initial, like, time in a shop that felt uncomfortable to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that still happens now. I mean, just mentioned earlier, the technology is always changing. So there'll be times where, or weeks where I'll feel like I'll ask questions every day, all day long. And be like, man, I just feel like I don't feel confident. I don't know any of this information. And I think now I'm more experienced enough where I understand that it's all part of the process. But for the younger guys who've, it's their first few months and all they're doing is asking questions, and maybe they feel a little guilty or self-conscious, it's important to remember that you're going to ask questions for the rest of your life, because there's always going to be things that you don't know. Especially the cars are changing, the technology is changing, people are changing, and so just stay on top of the questions. Ask as many silly, non-silly questions as you can, because it's better to ask that question than to break $1,000 part because you didn't ask the question. So it's
Then you're really beating up on yourself, right? Like, once that happens, it's kind of a spiral, and it's hard to get out of that as a young technician. You break that $1,000 part. I remember early in my career, this is back, early 2000s. And one of the things that looking back, was always so terrified was, uh, when I was going to tech school, they would talk about, hey, if you test this wrong, you could possibly fry the computer. And so forever, for a long, long time, I was very, very hesitant to touch some of the electrical pieces on a car, because I was so terrified of frying a controller that I didn't want to really dive in and find out for myself, right? Because I was afraid of getting in trouble. And I think there are a couple components to this, to where it can hinder your development by being scared. You kind of have to be able to go in and do some trial and error stuff, but at the same time, you don't want to get in trouble. You don't want to do something wrong. I don't think anybody wants to screw something up, especially something that's expensive to repair. How did you get your mindset over that, of being able to kind of get through maybe some of the fears that young technicians have?
it's something that there it doesn't go away. Like it's just how you handle it is what changes. Because I mean, this year specifically, I've been going through some of those slumps, and it's easy to spiral. You have one bad day or two bad days, and it's easy to let that snowball into a bad week or a bad month. So it's about how you're handling, those mistakes, and your confidence is one of the most important tools that you have as a just a regular person, not even a technician. So um, all you can do is ask those questions, try to replace those parts in the way that you've been told or the repair manual's telling you, and just do everything by the book. And if that part breaks or something breaks, I mean, those things are going to happen. And also falls onto your quality check process is, if you're breaking something, or maybe you don't feel confident about something, triple check it. Have someone quality check it for you. Just being honest. If you do break something, don't try to hide it. It's because that's 9.5 times out of 10 is going to create more problems in the future. So just own it, and that's going to be, your managers and foreman will recognize that and respect that so much more if you just come forward and be like, hey, I broke this part, $1,000 part. I mean, that doesn't feel great for anyone, because some of these young guys don't even have $1,000. So the first thing they might be thinking is, oh no, I have to pay for this part. But I mean, I haven't worked at too many shops, but most of the shops that I've heard of will handle that for you and just be like, as long as we're not making the same mistake 3, 4 times in a row, is just own it, learn from it, and ask how you can do better in the future.
Oh, that's such a big component of it, is just general fear. And for those of you that are leaders out there, I think the more that you can calm those fears and reinforce that, hey, we don't want this happening all the time, but mistakes do happen. We are humans. We are working with some highly complex machines. it's going to happen from time to time. And from a leadership standpoint, I think it's very, very important that you have your thumb on the pulse of the shop so that when that young technician does make a mistake, that you're there to pick them up and maybe give them a pep talk, or maybe give them a kick in the tail end. Just, whatever it is that you need to do to make sure that you're keeping them on a progressive path forward, I think is really, really important. And that there is some element to coaching there, right? Like there is some element to knowing if you need the carrot or the stick in a certain scenario. And especially with young technicians, your words mean a lot. And if you're going out to the shop and you're just going to beat them over the head with a mistake they made, they can quickly become paralyzed from making decisions and making solid repairs and following their process, because they just are shaken, right? And I think we've all seen that numerous times where you get that young technician that starts to go down that spiral. A lot of times they don't stick around.
Yeah, it's a big hit to someone's confidence, and especially if the leaders in your shop, whether they're titled leaders or just natural leaders in the shop, is how that's, comes down the ladder and how it's handled with the younger guys. And like you said, taking them under your wing, or just how the situation is handled, can impact, a whole person's life. And it sounds a little extreme, but if they're at that point in their career, or, their time as a technician, then being gentle in a way, but also firm enough to set the boundaries, but also help them get back right on the right path, because that snowball effect is very,
Real.
it's easy to get wrapped up in that. And it's easy
Yeah.
to, and that's not just comebacks and confidence, but just negativity and positivity. And that's, who you're around and who the leaders are in your shop set the tone.
100%. Could not agree more. How much do technicians really make? At WrenchWay, we work with some of the best shops and dealerships across the country, and we've discovered that technicians often earn more than what some online sources suggest. For example, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that technicians make an average of $47,000 per year, but we know that's not reflective of the true earning potential of technicians. We've teamed up with ASE to create an online technician pay tool, a free, easy-to-use resource for both aspiring technicians and those already in the automotive and diesel industries. This tool lets you explore real pay data with customizable searches by industry, shop type, location, and experience level. Check it out at wrenchway.com/pay or follow the link in the show notes. We also encourage current technicians to anonymously submit their own pay data to help make the tool even better for everyone. Lastly, thank you for your continued support as we work to promote and improve careers in automotive and diesel. We couldn't do it without you. Now, if I'm that young technician listening to this podcast right now, and I want to figure out ways that I can stand out, and maybe not even just stand out, just be competent at my job at an early age or an early experience level, what are some things that a young tech could do to really stand out amongst the crowd?
I'd say probably discipline, hard work, knowing who in the shop you can go to for advice and guidance. Just feeling out some, like, knowing in the shop who's people you can trust, whose input you can trust, who's going to be honest with you. And it may not always be the person that's your titled leader or your titled manager. I have guys in my shop that come to me that aren't on the same team as me, that aren't directly working next to me. And it's just because they know where my head's at and how I'll handle situations and how I'll talk to them. And I'll be honest with them, but not mean about it. It's just like, I'll be very like straightforward. And, it doesn't always sit well with some people, but just knowing who you can trust, who's going to be honest with you, and also keep it real. Just like, hey, just being able to do both.
I think it helps that you're a nice guy too, right? I think a lot of us that came up in the industry, it was kind of a combination of some grumpy older techs with some techs that might not have had the experience, but were more than happy to tell you how they would fix it. I think being able to find that right person that fits who you are, and sometimes it's just, at least in my experience, it was important just to be able to talk through a problem, right? Like if you had a problem and it was stuck in your head, to have somebody to just say, hey, here's the scenario I'm dealing with, and uh I've tried this, I've tried this. And then I've noticed that even with young techs that I talk to today, that they'll almost kind of talk their way through it, but it took talking to another person in order for them to get to that conclusion. I'm not sure if that's a similar experience that you've seen or not, but it is interesting how just kind of saying something out loud can help somebody connect the dots.
Yeah, absolutely. And more recently, in some of my experiences have been when I'm teaching somebody something, it helps me to learn it more too. I learn more about myself. I learn more about what I'm speaking about or the conversation. And that could be the same thing as having a mentor or someone to go to in the shop and just talking it back and forth with them. You may be halfway through the conversation and you like, oh, I don't even know why I'm asking this question. I know the answer now because I just talking about it and kind of getting out of your own headspace and just uh, verbalizing how you're feeling about it or how you're thinking about it can go a long ways.
Yeah, and I think sometimes just stepping away from the car and having a conversation about it, I, I think everybody can fall into that trap where you're just so focused on that car, and you think you've thought through every scenario. And if you take a step away, it can help you maybe think a little bit more clearly. And that's not just on cars. I think I deal with that in general business on a day-to-day basis, where if I'm struggling with something, I'll kind of step away for a few minutes and then kind of revisit it after that. And it helps almost give you some form of reset to where you can attack it with a different mindset or a different attitude. And I think that can be really, really beneficial.
Yeah, having the ability to take a walk or having the ability to um, just get out and get out of your headspace. I mean, there's nothing that can help you more like an extra set of hands or an extra set of eyes. Um, so I think a walk sometimes will help me the most. If I'm having a tough time on a car, or a tough time in the shop, or a tough day, just sometimes I'll just walk around the dealership and walk around the shop and just get some fresh air and just take a step back from whatever problem I'm encountering, whether it's something on a car or something in completely outside of work. Let's say you're having a tough day at home and it's just, sticking with you at work. It's just take that time, take a step back, because if you just take a few minutes now, it's probably going to save you a couple hours later on.
That's great advice right there. So if you see Curtis walking around the dealership, don't bother him. He's trying to think.
Yeah, I'm trying to get out of my own head, that's for sure.
Now you talked about discipline. I think it's easy to say discipline. What I want to dive into what you mean by that, right? What are some things that would signal to you that, hey, there's this young technician, they have that discipline that I'm talking about? Is it as simple as just showing up to work on time, or are there other elements to that?
Um, it definitely starts there. I mean, I'm be the first to tell you that I haven't showed up every on work to work every day on time, for sure, especially as a technician. But it's one of those things that you got to set your goals. You got to focus on what the bigger picture is. And even when you don't want to do something, or you're having thoughts like, I don't want to do this, or just you just got to stay the course and figure out what the bigger picture is and keep working towards that. Even small steps, baby steps, anything that's pushing you towards that is going to be better. And I think that's, for me, that's what discipline is because there'll be plenty of days where I'll wake up and I don't really want to do this, or I'll work on a car. I don't really want to do this. And it might take me a few more minutes to get started or to get, on that direction, but just realizing like I got to put my music on, I need to read a quote or listen to a little clip from a podcast or whatever just gets you inspired and gets you focused on the goal. Is in my mind, that's what discipline is just staying focused on the goal no matter how you're feeling, no matter what you do or don't want to do.
Yeah, that frame of mind that you put yourself in is so important. And if you find yourself just scrolling social media or reading the news or whatever, I think that can quickly take you down the wrong path. And I I know, even for example, like say you've got a certain type of job that you don't like doing, right? I think we all naturally have some type of job that's not our favorite type of job to do.
Oh
Not sure if you've got that, Curtis, or not,
oh
but like
yeah.
there are definitely times where you might see that work order be dispatched to you. You're like, "Ugh, of all days, I don't want to do this right now." Like that is the perfect time to kind of take a, if you have a trigger that you can understand when that thought is going through your head and trying to stop that thought and maybe trying to take a different viewpoint toward it. I think you'll be a lot happier, and I think it will help you get through that job with a lot less pain if you just adjust your attitude as you go into that job.
Yeah, that and social media is one of the hardest things to get. There's so many distractions.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to log in to our scan tools with our phone. So we have like every time I log into the scan tool or I log into the computer, I have to use my phone as like a second step verification. And I will catch myself like just randomly. I'm like, what am I doing? There's nothing. There's nothing here. Why am I even on Instagram right now? And so it's easier than ever to get distracted, and it's easier than ever to get off that path of, when you get a bad ticket or when you hear something negative or when you see something that distracts you or whatever is it's hard. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
tell you it's not. But how do you handle that? Finding ways that work best for you, whether it's your music, like I mentioned earlier. I think that's the thing that helps me the most is knowing when I'm like, oh, I got this ticket and I don't want to do it, and maybe I've been dilly dallying for a while or I've been on my phone. Is what I can rely on every time is my music. And going to that every time, be like, okay, well, just got to put some music on. Be like, all right, time to get to work. And realizing that and knowing when you've been spending 30 minutes on your phone, like, hey, maybe I should actually get to work now.
Yeah, and I think that's where that having those goals in mind is so impactful, because then you've got a why as to why I shouldn't be on my phone right now, why I shouldn't be looking through social media. Is this going to help me reach those productivity goals that I've been trying to hit? Is this going to help me my paycheck look better if I'm a flat rate technician, being able to go out and produce more hours? And I think it's much easier said than done, right? Like I love that you have music as a trigger, because I do think that can be really, really helpful. Do you listen to any type of music in particular, or are you changing it up? What are you doing to
um,
kind of do to get yourself in that right headspace?
I know what works for me. I'll usually start out in like certain categories. I'm big into like electronic music. So there's a few DJs or artists that I know their music will get me on the right path. So I'll just cue it up, whether it's on my speaker or my headphones, and it might take a little bit, but once it starts going, it helps me so much to know what my trigger is to get back on track, but also knowing like setting goals for yourself. You mentioned those metrics, but also just goals in life. I usually set like a 1, 3, 5, and 10 year goal about every year, and just I have it in a easily accessible place so I can look at it like I've like my paper taped up on my wall where I can see it every day. Or I have some motivational quotes that I have taped up right by my computer at work and I can see those every day. And so when I'm having that tough time, just looking at them and then like thinking about what I'm doing now, is that going to get me there?
Mm. I did you always have that confidence to be able to put, if it's a motivational quote on your toolbox, or I just go back to when I was getting into the industry and how shy I was about doing stuff like that, because I didn't want to catch a hard time from the other techs or a manager or whoever, that I didn't feel comfortable doing that. Now I wouldn't care, but like back then when you're first getting in, you're like you're still trying to kind of get a feel for how things work, and I think when you're younger in your career as a whole, or just a younger adult as a whole, maybe you don't have the confidence to do that because you're afraid that, you're going to get called out for it, or something, somebody's going to make fun of you for it. But they are really impactful and helpful things to do. And I think some of the better techs that I've seen, just they don't care about that, right? Like they don't have maybe that imposter syndrome, or like they're not afraid to put specs of common things that they're going to be working up on a toolbox. They're truly thinking about the efficiencies of how they get better, and what they can do to make sure that they are is giving that 100% when they're in the bay. And uh, to anybody that's out there that's maybe younger in their career listening to this right now, I do think that's a really important thing, to get comfortable in your own skin. And if that's something that's going to make you be better, do it. And don't be ashamed of it. Like, truly just own it. And I think you'll be in a better mental space because of it.
Yeah, I think as long as you're following the rules of the shop, some shops
Yeah.
have, a lot of shops now have built-in toolboxes and maybe more like they want a presentation of the shop a certain way. As long as you're following the rules of the shop, I think it's important to build your space into something that makes you feel comfortable and something that you're proud of. But you're always going to catch heat from other guys in the shop. That doesn't change whether you're in 1 year or 20 years. You're gonna always catch stuff. So it's just goes back to focusing on yourself and focusing on what drives you forward, and just put that around you. Surround yourself with the stuff that helps you be successful, because that's what's going to be important at the end of the day.
Yeah. My last point on music, I'll say, for me personally, uh, I've really found that there's different types of music for different types of things that I'm doing. And if it's household chores, I've got kind of one genre of music that I like to listen to. If I'm on a plane flying somewhere and I want to get some reading in, I'll listen to a different type of music. I am one of those people that I can't work very effectively if I'm listening to a podcast, right? Like, or if I'm listening to an audiobook or something like that, because I feel like I've got to give it my full attention. Whereas music, I don't really have to pay attention to. It's just kind of in the background, and gets you moving. And that's my personal experience. That might be different for everybody. But it is funny that you say that, because I have the same triggers, and music is a really effective way for me to get stuff done. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, I think I work the same way. I think I enjoy podcasts and books, but it's very hard for me to focus on those things while I'm focusing on fixing the car right or diagnosing or whatever it is at work. So I think I've heard in some more advanced podcasts that music is one of those triggers for pretty much anybody, that it helps your certain uh the chemical balance in your brain. It just triggers more positivity, and it triggers kind of the attitude shift that a lot of people need to just focus on something, what anything. It just helps people. That's why people work out with music. That's why people work with music or drive with music. It just helps them focus on what they're doing and kind of tune out some of that distraction.
This week's episode of Beyond the Wrench is brought to us by Jasper Engines and Transmissions. Okay, your customer's engine or transmission has failed, but now is not the time for them to trade their vehicle. Not without a working engine or transmission. Besides, would they have kept their vehicle another 3 to 5 years if their engine or transmission had not let them down? If you answered yes, then Jasper Engines and Transmissions is your choice to give your customer's vehicle new life and many thousands of miles of enjoyable driving performance. When considering the high cost of a new or newer used vehicle, there's a pretty good case to be made for replacing a drivetrain component that has failed or is delivering poor performance. Rather than trading their car, truck, van, or SUV, install a quality remanufactured Jasper product for less than your customer would have to invest in a new vehicle or a newer used vehicle. Check out their website at jasperengines.com to learn more about the money-saving value of Jasper. One thing that I thought was interesting as we were prepping for this podcast, you had talked about the importance of workflows and being able to kind of get that young technician confidence. Can we talk a little bit about that in what we're meaning by workflows, and maybe dive a little bit deeper into workflows themselves? I know that's a broad way of bringing up workflows, but I am interested in talking through that at a little bit more depth, because I do think foundationally that is such an important piece of a young technician's career that maybe they don't necessarily fully understand.
Yeah, it kind of ties in with getting comfortable in your space. Workflows can, I mean, every shop is going to be set up different, but it's about finding, I feel like muscle memory is one of the most important things that helps me uh, focus and just get a job done more efficiently. So when you perform, you pull a car in, you check the fluids, or you perform the multi-point, is just focus for the for 2 to 3 weeks. If you're trying to, shift into a more efficient process and workflow, is consciously pay attention to what you're doing every car. Pay attention to what you're doing every minute of the day. It sounds very extreme, but if you put in that conscious effort to perform those processes every time, whether it's an oil change, you pull the car in, you check, you do your multi-point, then you do that process every time consciously for a week, that will become your new process and it will become muscle memory, and you won't have to focus on it as much anymore. And it'll be streamlined into a way that just naturally feels better for you and naturally feels better and provides the customer with a better experience because it's faster, more efficient. And I mean, I do my multi-point starting in the same corner of the car, whether it just right front corner and I go all the way around. And then when I send my quotes or I do my video inspections, everything is done in the same order every time. And sometimes it just feels like second nature. I don't even know that I'm doing it, but I've done it so many times that it's just become such a fluid habit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that can be really key in life as a whole, right? And as I'm sitting here, have like the book Atomic Habits sitting right next to me, and I think it's such a solid piece of advice for any technician, not just necessarily a young technician, but if there's something that you're, and it could change depending on where your lift is, right? Or where your bays are and how you're getting cars into the bay and how many steps you're taking to, I have to go get the keys or I have to go do this. Is there a way to make that more effective? I know I had just recently recommended the book The Toyota Way to a technician not too long ago, where it talks a lot about that, right? How, when you look at workflow, and if you're able to really tear your own workflow apart, figure out ways that you can find those efficiencies and make sure that you're building the right habits, because something as simple as what you're talking about, where I start my inspection in the same corner of the car and I go through the same way all the way through, or every single car, you develop this level of comfort with that process, right? And if somebody were to come to you and say, "Hey, Curtis, I'm going to need you to start on the other side of the car," it would probably throw you for a little bit of a loop, right? Because you've done so many of them now that it's your way of doing things.
Yeah, switching bays is a perfect example. If we move the shop around, or maybe I'm full in my bay and I have to move over just one stall, it becomes a whole. I'm like, oh, this feels so weird. I get distracted easily. I'm like, I'll walk. Maybe the air reels are on one side of the car and now they're on the other side, and it's just like I'm over here trying to grab something that's not even there. So it just comes down to that just completely natural, I mean, habit, and you disrupt that, and it's just affects everything. It just affects the efficiency of everything. I mean, I've broken the process down with a few guys, and it's just you have to kind of take your ego and set it aside and just be like, I want to be better and I want to improve. And then, having someone help you, but also just taking the time to reflect and being like, this can be done better because there's always a way to do it better. And just consciously
Yes, there
focused
is.
on how can you be better? And sometimes you need a third party or another set of eyes and be like, hey Jay, I'm really struggling with getting my oil changes done. Is there any tips or tricks? And that's when that mentorship from those other technicians come in and just be like, hey, like, how can I do this differently?
Yeah. Yeah. And there might be something, just a tiny little tweak that can make a huge difference. And it's funny that you mentioned the part about trying to grab for the hose reel, but it's not there. It's on the other side, but just simply changing the bay really changed your outlook. I always look to, if you've ever changed up your toolbox, right? Like you've reorganized your toolbox and you are, hey, you put your sockets in a different drawer now. How often do you reach for the other drawer that they were in before you go to the drawer that actually has the sockets now, right? Like it is, you talk about that muscle memory. There's so much of that to where you train yourself, and we're all creatures of habit. And if you're opening up that other drawer constantly that doesn't have it, then you're shutting it and you're opening the other one. It'll take a little bit of time for you to learn it. You'll get there. But if you were doing that every single day where you're having to open up different drawers on a box to figure out where you're at, I have a feeling that would really, really throw a person off.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things is reorganizing your toolbox or moving toolboxes or getting a new toolbox or whatever the thing is just those things that sit in such a natural spot for you and just moving them. And it's going to really throw off your whole process. I think
Isn't
one
that
of the
funny?
silliest things that I've seen is we take all of our cars to car wash after, and I'll see guys go to car wash, come back to their stall, find out the ticket they're going, then walk back out to the parking lot to get that ticket. And it's like, why don't you just know the ticket you're getting before you go to the car wash so you can get it on the way? And
Yeah.
it'll save someone 30 minutes to an hour up throughout the whole day just on walking from the car wash back to the shop. It's just
Yeah.
such a simple, like tracing your steps kind of thing.
Yeah. And you're saving your body in the meantime, right? And we used to do, back when I was working in shops more often, more operationally, we would do spaghetti charts and just follow along. You could print out a simple map or drop a simple map of a shop, and then with a colored marker or pencil, be able to just kind of trace the lines of where they walk to. And you'd be shocked at the amount of times that we would see something as simple as like, hey, if you bought another set of oil filter wrenches for this bay, you would save so much time with people walking all over the place trying to find whatever it is that they need. And that's a really simple example of what I'm talking about. But there are so many of those inefficiencies that maybe even the business or the shop doesn't see, that you as a technician that are living it every single day can really improve upon. I think if your mindset is, how do we constantly get better? How do we constantly figure out the next best way to do this, or just tweak it a little bit? Like, always looking for that 1%, and that getting just a little bit better can be a hugely impactful thing to a technician's life.
Yeah, something as simple as going to the restroom and grabbing new gloves from parts or grabbing your parts from parts is instead of going one way and back and then this way, it's kind of making a loop and grabbing both of those things at the same time. And borrowing tools. I see a lot of technicians waste time borrowing tools or going to get special tools. So if those special tools aren't there or you've borrowed the same, I don't know, wrench or something from somebody who's three stalls down. It's like, how much time in a day is that wasting you? And it sounds small, like, oh, it's only 10 seconds. But I mean,
Over
10
the course of a
seconds added
day.
up. Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah.
can save yourself a lot of time. And, you know, some things that I work with some of the younger guys on at my shop is time yourself. Just step outside of your usual process, time yourself. How long does it take you to go do these things? And then try it a different way. How long does it take you to do those things? And then you take that and you add it up through the day. And then you take that every day of the week, every week of the month, and so on. And you're like, wow, I just saved myself 3 days of time over the whole year.
That's that is a great, great tip just in general, to time yourself. And I've heard of that in other elements, but I don't know that I've necessarily seen a technician actually time themselves from task to task. And, if they, to take that even a step further, just writing down every single thing you do over the course of your day, going back to the Atomic Habits book and some of the other books on habits that I've read, where that we've all read, where, just simply documenting or documenting everything that you've done throughout the course of a day. I do think if you almost view yourself as you're watching somebody in a movie, or on a TV show over the course of a day, and you could almost take yourself out of your body, kind of watch what you're doing. There are so many things that you can learn that are simple things. And maybe you see that person that is falling into the social media trap too often and they find themselves on their phone and, oh, notification popped up. So I'm going to look. Well, maybe I should turn the notifications off so it's not the first thing that pops up on my phone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, stepping outside of your usual pattern and keeping an open mind and just if you're really focused on being more efficient and you're really focused on being better and for young guys starting off doing that and like if you build that good process or that good workflow from day one or month one or year one, I mean that's going to take your whole you're going to just build off of that for 10, 15, 20 years, however the time is. If you're starting out doing these things, like that's even better because you've heard the saying, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. Well, it is. So if you're starting off focused on being more efficient and focused on saving yourself time and not rushing it to where you're, cutting corners or making too many mistakes, but just your day-to-day walking around the shop. I mean, those are important things that are easily overlooked.
We talked about goals earlier, and I'd love to get into a little bit of advice for younger technicians and say you've got that younger technician and they have a goal of becoming a master level diag tech. What should they do to start kind of on that path to go down that direction, regardless of where they're starting from?
Usually for techs, you have access to all the online courses first. So focused on the things that you can control because you can't always control when the shop or the dealership's going to send you to training, but you can get all those classes done so that you can speak up and say, "Hey, when can I go to this class? I've got all my training done. I've got all my certifications done on the computer or whatever those things are." Is get as much done you can, get as much done you can for yourself, and then work with your manager or your service manager and set a kind of a timeline, a rough timeline, and speak up for yourself because not everyone knows that that's what you want to do. If
Mm,
you speak up and say, "Hey, I want to be master certified in 5 years," well, that sounds crazy, but it's not impossible. And you might not hit it, and that's okay too. But the people around you've got to know what those goals are. You need to find people that support those goals. I mean, you don't want to tell the most negative guy in the shop that you're trying to be master certified before him because he's just going to bring you down. But
yeah.
telling the people that are there to support you and build up, help you build up yourself, that's, just focus on what you can control. And sometimes hitting those goals is out of your control. And you're just like, well, it is what it is. I've got to focus back on the path and do what I can do for myself.
Well, and I think a lot of times leadership will look at, hey, has that tech been doing everything that they could to earn their right to go to this in-person training, right? And if I'm in that chair and I look and like they've completed like one of the virtual trainings when there's hundreds available to them, that's not a great sign to me to want to invest that money to go send that person to a school, right? And a lot of times that might mean that you're paying for airfare and hotel and meals and the training itself. And I feel like this could be communicated better from leadership at a lot of levels, is, you know, kind of clearly stating, hey, if you want to do this stuff and you want the buy-in of the company to send you to more training and have that training be beyond whatever the OE is requiring us to do, I think there are little things you can do that will be big indicators to leadership that this is somebody worthy of investing more into.
Initiative. I think that's,
Initiative. Yes.
just
Yes.
getting
And
those
that's never
things.
changed, right? Throughout the history of mankind. Like if you show initiative, you're probably going to get further ahead.
Yeah, I see young guys get moved up in the shop faster because when things are slow for maybe the express team, they're speaking to or working with some of the other technicians across the way, like, hey, I just want to learn. Like, and then I see some guys on their phones, on their toolboxes, just, social media in a way, and it's like that can be a easy indicator. Everyone in the shop sees it. They see one guy over here, he's interested. He's either doing his safety tests, his OEM tests, or he's working with me or somebody else, just learning and being part of the situation and knowing what's going on rather than just sitting around. Because so many people see that, even if you don't think so.
Well, and talk about such a visual cue, right? Even to the other more experienced techs in the shop, that if somebody does voice their goals and they articulate what their goals are, I want to be that master level diag tech, yet everybody in the shop sees you when it's slow on your phone, really not doing much, versus somebody that articulates that goal and is taking every opportunity they get to better themselves. Who do you think that experienced tech is going to buy into more and want to help out more? It's the person that's putting in the effort, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you see somebody who's willing to clean up the floor, put away some, oil filters or whatever, just when they're not asked, but they just notice that something needs to be done, or they see you working on a job and they come over and like, hey, like, what are you doing? And then, 5, 10 minutes or an hour sometimes, you can learn so much, but you're also like, hey, if the manager is asking like, who should we move up or whatever, you're like, oh, I saw Jim over here, he's been working with me every time there's this down period, and they're gonna be like, oh, okay. So it's just, or I see him cleaning up all the time. He's always busy. He's always putting himself in a position to, get something done and look useful or seem useful. Even when it's slow, you're doing something that helps the team.
Oh, and I look at, say you've got that experienced tech that they're throwing the car up on the lift, they're taking the tires off, and you see that young tech kind of step away from what they're doing, especially if it's slow, and help that more veteran technician take the tires off and help save their back a little bit, and help them do some of the stuff that might be taking some of their working life off of them by every time they're lifting a tire up. It can be hard on them. But you see that young person step up and grab the tires for them. Like, it's little things like that that speak volumes to somebody's ability to really be successful in this industry. And again, if you're a young tech that's listening to this, what Curtis is telling us right now is absolutely solid gold. This is all great advice on how to go about your job, and not all of it's the most glorious stuff in the world, but I think when you do this stuff, that's what lends itself to you kind of working your way up the ladder and getting those diagnostic skills, or even becoming, you know, there's a lot to be said for a really good B tech, right? Like somebody that is can tear into anything and fix it and do it in a relatively quick amount of time. Uh, sometimes I almost feel like that part is underrated about the job, because there are a lot of that level tech that just absolutely crush it in the flat rate environment. And so, I think all that to say, just all of these little things add up to be really, really big things. And if you want to be a great technician, everything that Curtis is saying here is vital to your career growth.
Yeah, the hard work, initiative, and discipline will help you for the rest of your life. That'll never go away. Um, and starting working on those things now and consciously putting in the effort to get better at them, uh, it will never turn you in the wrong direction.
No, no. Oh, so much good in this episode here, Curtis. Like we're going through it, and as we're talking, it's generating more ideas with me. I'm sure it is with you as well, and like other things we can talk about. And we haven't even started to talk about your video MPIs, what you've done in that part of the world of being a technician, and all the other great things you're doing in the industry. So we're a little short on time today, but I really hope we can get you back on at some point here, because this is just scratching the surface of a lot of different things that we could talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to be back on. And you mentioned video inspections. I think I could talk for another hour or two about video inspections. So,
We'll do that. I'm going to take you up on that. We're going to talk a lot about that, because uh, for those of you that don't know Curtis is uh, what I would consider the one of the most polished professional technicians that you will find. And I think the more we have the Curtises of the world on to speak about what they see as ways to improve the industry, as ways to improve as a young technician, as ways to improve as an experienced technician, I think the more that anybody listening to this can take this and either teach your own team about some of what Curtis has been able to relay to us, as well as like if you're that young tech, or maybe you're that educator that's out there, listen to this. Like there is so much good to come out of this. And Curtis, I just can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this conversation today.
Yeah, Jay, I really appreciate those kind words. Just quickly back to the beginning of the episode where you mentioned
Please.
the roundtable and technicians, and I think that's one of those areas that's very, very often overlooked is having someone at that table that speaks up for technicians because it's easy for managers and leadership to want one thing, but then how do you get that translated over technicians? Because there's a lot of times that it doesn't sit well with those technicians, and having somebody at the table to work between both parties and be like, well, I don't really think that'll work the way you think it might. Here, let's try to get it into a place that works together. And I see that a lot with just these conversations online and some of these videos is technicians are becoming more and more a part of the main, the process of a dealership. I mean, they generate the most revenue, but the video inspections opens up the door to communication and the person behind the car, the person behind the wrench, and it's just more and more focused on how can we bring leaders of the shop and leaders of the dealership together with technicians in a way that works together. Um, I mean, I know flat rate is a very sensitive subject, but something will need to give as we move forward in this space because people are realizing that other shops will give them things that maybe their old shop won't. And that, is a lot more important to people than I think some of the managers and leadership realizes.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I said it. I love seeing technicians at the table with a voice and being able to speak up, because and doing being able to speak up without being punished for it, right? Like I think that's a big thing that I feel very strongly about. We have to be able to listen to each other. And at some level, Curtis, I think that's where you're so great, is that you can act as a translator between leadership and technicians and be able to make sure that the message is received the right way on both sides, because it can be very, very easy in this conversation, if you're a leader, to get defensive over some of the stuff that technicians are saying, or vice versa. And when we take a step back and hopefully the culture's in a decent spot at your shop, wherever you're at, and you can have those conversations, because that leads to so much good if you can get on the same page. Yet so much of our industry is not on the same page. So a great point there, Curtis. I think you bring up the flat rate thing and pay as a whole. We could spend a week talking about that and maybe not come out the other side any better. So, it is one of those elephant in the room types of things that I think we've got to keep talking about, keep trying to listen, and really, hopefully for the betterment of our industry, come up with something where people are happy, right? And I do think we've made a lot of progress over the last few years. Still a very, very long way to go.
Yeah, it's definitely a sensitive subject for both parties, and one that, rightfully so. There's, two sides to a coin for a reason. So just keep pushing in a direction, and hopefully, I don't think there's a general solution, but I think that shops can work with their technician team and figure out what works best for that space, because not every formula for flat rate is going to work everywhere.
No, and as we're talking, this could just keep going on and on, because then it is truly about, you know, do your techs understand the financials and how a business runs? And if not, have you given them any training so that they do understand the importance of profitability and the importance of continually growing the business? So I I've got about 10 different topics that we could probably talk about on the next time that we have you on. So hopefully it's not too far down the road when we're able to get you back on again. But Curtis, it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you in person right off the bat and have several good conversations now. Hopefully we can keep these conversations going, because you have so much good to say, and I think everybody can benefit from it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I look forward to having those conversations and kind of, helping technicians get a voice out there. And and just focusing on making everything better in the the shop space and the shop and dealership environments, and hopefully we can build upon that here. So thank you for having
You sure
me.
will. Oh, absolutely. Absolute pleasure, Curtis. Look forward to the next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
That wraps up another episode of Beyond the Wrench. If you liked this episode, please show your support by rating and following the podcast. You can also watch the video interviews on WrenchWay's YouTube channel. Speaking of WrenchWay, did you know Beyond the Wrench is managed and produced by the WrenchWay team? WrenchWay is an online community dedicated to promoting and improving automotive and diesel careers. We help technicians find the best shops to work at, and we also help auto, diesel, and CTE instructors get more support from local industry. You can learn more by visiting wrenchway.com.